My wife cheated on me with our best friend, and when I found out, she stole $250, $0 of our inheritance and signed over our house worth $2 million to him. Now we're headed to court over everything. I never thought I'd be the guy to get like this, but here I am. The moment I found out my wife, Lisa, was cheating on me with our best friend, Mark, everything changed in an instant. It's crazy how fast your entire world can turn upside down. I mean, I had seen some weird signs. Her late nights, her avoiding intimacy, the way she'd get defensive whenever I asked about her phone, but I never really wanted to believe it was anything serious. I just told myself she was stressed or maybe bored, and I tried to brush it off. But then one day, I noticed her acting even stranger. She was secretive about her texts, deleting messages more often than usual. She started slipping out for work dinners that I knew weren't work-related. I'd come home and find her acting nervous, her eyes darting around like she was hiding something. At first, I thought maybe she was just stressed about the new project at her job, but deep down I knew it wasn't that simple. Something was off. One night I decided to check her phone. I know trust is everything, but I felt like I was losing her anyway, so I couldn't help myself. I found messages between her and Mark, explicit stuff, talking about sex, plans to meet up, jokes about how she was finally free. My stomach dropped. I felt like I'd been kicked in the gut. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I loved, was cheating on me with our best friend. That betrayal hit harder than anything I've ever experienced. I started to piece things together. How long had this been going on? How could she lie so easily? She'd always been bitchy when I questioned her about her late nights or her phone, but I never imagined she was hiding a whole secret life. The worst part, I later found out she'd stolen $250, $0 of our inheritance, money that was supposed to secure our future, and she'd signed over our house, worth $2 million, to Mark. I couldn't wrap my head around it. How could she do this? How could she betray me? Steal from us and then hand him the keys to everything we had built. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial. That money was supposed to be our safety net, our future. Now it was gone, and she was saying she did it because she wanted to start fresh, as if she wasn't the one who took everything from us. When I confronted her, she lied through her teeth, saying I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that Mark was just a friend she'd known forever. But I knew better. I had the proof, and I knew she was lying. She always lied when she was cornered. Now I'm left standing here feeling like I've been hit by a freight train. My mind is racing. How did it come to this? Was I blind? Did I miss the signs? And most of all, how do I even begin to pick up the pieces of a life that's been shattered so completely? I thought I knew her. I thought I knew us. But now I'm not so sure about anything anymore. After discovering everything, I was in a fog. The house suddenly felt too quiet, too empty. My mind kept replaying the moment I found those messages, every word, every lie she told me. I couldn't believe she'd do this, betray me, steal from us, and then pretend everything was fine. It hit me like a punch to the chest that the woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, had been lying right to my face the whole time. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone, trying to process what I just uncovered. My hands were trembling, and I kept asking myself, how did it get so bad? When did I miss the signs? I kept thinking about all those nights she'd be out late, her cold attitude, her secretive phone habits, and how I brushed it off because I didn't want to face the reality. I kept telling myself she was just stressed or maybe having a rough patch, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. I decided I needed to confront her. I called her at work, and when she answered, her voice was casual, like she hadn't just been caught cheating. I told her I knew everything. The silence on the other end was deafening. When she finally spoke, she started with her usual bullshit, saying she didn't know what I was talking about, that I was paranoid, that Mark was just a friend she'd known forever. She played the victim, saying I was overreacting, that I was destroying our marriage over nothing. That was her go-to move, deny, lie, and make me doubt myself. I lost my temper. I told her I had proof, screenshots, bank statements, everything, and that I wasn't going to be played for a fool anymore. That's when she started crying, claiming she loved me, that she was sorry, that it was a mistake. But her words felt hollow. I knew she was trying to manipulate me just like she always did when things got uncomfortable. Still, part of me wanted to believe her, to believe it was just a fling, that it was fixable. But the trust was already broken beyond repair. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. How could she do this? How could she lie to me for so long? And the worst part, she had stolen our money, our future, everything we worked for. I was furious at Mark too, knowing he was just as much a part of this betrayal. That bastard had been living off our trust, acting like he was our friend, then stabbing us in the back. I couldn't understand how he could do this to me, to us. We'd been close for years, and now I saw him as nothing but a thief and a cheat. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the moments I missed, all the signs I ignored. I felt stupid for trusting her, for believing in the marriage I thought we had. I kept asking myself whether I should just walk away or try to fix things. But honestly, I was too angry to consider fixing anything at that point. I just wanted her gone, out of my life, and for her to face the consequences of what she'd done. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. All I knew was that my world was crumbling, and I was left trying to piece it back together, one broken shard at a time. In the days that followed, everything started to unravel even more quickly than I expected. I didn't sleep much, kept replaying that confrontation over and over, trying to find some way to make sense of it all. I knew I had to act fast, especially with the money stolen and the house signed over to Mark. It wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about protecting what was left of my life. I started digging into the financial mess she'd left behind. The $250, $0 inheritance she took. I traced the bank transfers, the withdrawals, everything. Turns out she'd been funneling money into some secret accounts, trying to hide her tracks. I hired a lawyer, and that's when I learned she'd already signed over the house to Mark. The deed was in his name. I couldn't believe she'd gone that far, that she'd risked everything for some sick sense of betrayal. And she kept lying about it, insisting she was just trying to start fresh and that I was overreacting. The more I found out, the angrier I got. I realized she'd been planning this for a while. The late nights, the secret meetings, the way she'd dodge my questions. She was building her escape plan behind my back. And Mark, of course, was right there with her, playing along, acting like he was our friend. It was like a bad movie, except this was real life, and I was the one getting played. I decided I needed to see what I was really dealing with. I set up some cameras around the house, just in case she tried to do something stupid. I also started gathering all the evidence I could, screenshots, bank statements, emails. I wanted to have everything documented before I made any moves. I knew she'd lie her way out of it if given the chance, so I had to be prepared. One night she came home late again. I was sitting in the living room, waiting. When she saw me, her face went pale. I confronted her then and there, laid out all the evidence I'd collected. Her reaction was classic: denial, then anger, then tears. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, saying I was ruining her life, that I had no right to accuse her of anything. She spun stories about how she was just stressed, how she needed space, how Mark was just a friend who was helping her cope. She even had the nerve to say she loved me, but she needed to find herself. Yeah, right, I felt like I was losing it. How could she be so cold, so manipulative? I trusted her with everything, and now I saw her for what she really was: selfish, dishonest, a liar. But I also knew I couldn't let her keep pulling the wool over my eyes. I told her I was taking back control. I told her I was going to fight for what's rightfully mine, and that I'd see her in court if I had to. She just looked at me with that bitchy smirk, like she thought she was untouchable. That night I lay awake again, realizing that my life was never going to be the same. I'd always believed in the vows we took, but now I saw it was just a lie. I had lost my trust, my security, and maybe even my future. I was hurt, furious, and confused, but I also knew I had to be smart about this. I wasn't going to let her or Mark walk away with everything. They thought they could cheat, steal, and manipulate their way out of it. Well, I was about to make sure they paid for it. This wasn't just about money anymore, it was about justice. Over the next couple of weeks, I threw myself into action. I wasn't going to let her get away with this without consequences. The first thing I did was meet with my lawyer again. We went over all the evidence I'd collected: bank statements, email exchanges, the signed-over deed, and planned a course of action. Court was inevitable now. She crossed every line, and I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. I also started looking into how to recover the stolen inheritance, which was no small feat. It was hidden in accounts she'd set up under fake names, but I was confident we could trace it. Meanwhile, she was still trying to gaslight me, claiming she made a mistake, that she was sorry, that she didn't mean for everything to blow up like this. She kept spinning stories about how she was trying to find herself and needed space, even after I told her I had all the proof. Her tone was bitchy, dismissive, like she thought she could just talk her way out of it, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw through her lies. I knew she'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. One day I decided I needed to confront Mark directly. I wanted to hear it from him. Did he really think he could just take everything and walk away? I found out where he was hiding out, and I showed up unannounced. When he saw me, he looked surprised, then uncomfortable. I didn't hold back. I told him exactly what I thought, that he was a thief, a betrayer, and that I knew about the money and the house. I told him I'd do everything in my power to make sure he paid for what he'd done. That was the moment I realized I wasn't just angry, I was dangerous. I wasn't going to let him get away with it. That confrontation was a wake-up call. It made everything real. I saw how deep this betrayal went, how much damage she'd done. But I also realized I had support, people who believed in me. My lawyer was working on freezing accounts and tracing the money, and I hired a private investigator to dig into her secret accounts and hidden assets. I wanted to make sure she didn't get away with a penny more. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her acting hurt, claiming she loved me, saying she was sorry, but I saw through her. Her tears were fake, her words hollow. She was trying to manipulate me into forgiving her, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. I wasn't going to be a patsy. I was done being the fool in this game. I knew I had to prepare for the worst, court battles, maybe even a divorce. But I also knew I was going to fight for every cent, for my house, for my future. The emotional was exhausting. I'd go from furious to devastated, then back again. Each day felt like a battle. I'd wake up angry, go through the motions, and then get hit again when I remembered what she'd done. It was like my trust had been shattered into a million pieces, and I didn't know if I'd ever be able to put it back together. But I also knew I had to be strong, for myself, and for whatever was left of my dignity. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming my life from the wreckage she'd left behind. By now, the legal process was in full swing. My lawyer had filed the necessary motions to freeze her accounts and start the process of reclaiming the stolen inheritance. The court date was set, and I was determined to see this through. Every day, I felt like I was walking a tightrope, angry, betrayed, but still holding on to the hope that justice would be served. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting to restore some sense of control, to prove that she couldn't just walk all over me and get away with it. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude shifted from defiant to defensive. She'd call me, trying to guilt-trip me into dropping the case. She'd say things like, "You're destroying our marriage over money," or "You're just making this worse for everyone." But I didn't buy her crocodile tears anymore. I knew she was just trying to manipulate me, to make me feel guilty so I'd back down. The truth was, she'd already crossed every line. She'd lied, cheated, stolen, and signed over our house, all behind my back. I wasn't going to let her slide just because she threw a pity party. One night she finally admitted she was sorry, but even her apology sounded rehearsed. She said she'd made mistakes, that she was confused, and that she didn't mean for everything to turn out this way. I looked at her and thought, sorry doesn't fix what you did. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that she stole from me, betrayed me, and tried to ruin my life. That moment made me realize I was done with her excuses. I'd given her too many chances, and she'd wasted every single one. The emotional toll was brutal. I found myself oscillating between anger and sadness, feeling like I was losing my mind. But I also knew I couldn't let her see me break. I had to stay strong for myself, for the house, and for the future I was trying to salvage. I started focusing on the practical side, getting my affairs in order, making sure I had proof of everything, and preparing for the long fight ahead. The more I learned about her plans, the more motivated I was to win. The worst part was realizing how much she'd lied, how deeply she'd betrayed me. It wasn't just about the money, though that was a huge part. It was about trust. I kept asking myself, did I ever really know her? Was she always this manipulative, or did she just hide it well? The betrayal had cut so deep, I wondered if I'd ever be able to look at her the same way again. But I knew I had to keep fighting, not just for the money or the house, but to reclaim my dignity. I'd been a fool, but I wasn't going to let her completely destroy me. This was her reckoning, and I was determined to see it through to the end. The court date finally arrived, and it felt like the culmination of everything I'd been fighting for. Standing there in front of the judge, I laid out all the evidence, screenshots, bank records, the signed-over deed. I saw her sitting there trying to look innocent, but I knew better. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I was finally getting some justice, and anger that it had taken so much to get here. The hearing was intense. Lisa tried to spin her version, claiming she was misunderstood, that she only wanted a fresh start, that Mark was just a friend. But I had proof that she'd been planning this for months, that she'd stolen our inheritance, and that she'd signed over our house to Mark to cut me out completely. The judge listened carefully, and in the end, the ruling was clear. The house would be returned to my name, and the stolen money would be recovered from her hidden accounts. Watching her reaction was almost satisfying. She looked defeated, like all her lying and scheming had finally caught up with her. Mark, on the other hand, was served notice that he could expect legal action for fraud and theft. That bastard thought he could just take what he wanted, but I made it clear he'd be paying for it. In the aftermath, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had fought for what was mine, and I'd won, barely, but I had. The house was back in my control, and I was in the process of recovering the inheritance. It wasn't easy, and I knew the scars from this betrayal would stay with me for a long time, but I had taken back my life piece by piece. Looking back, I realize how much I learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and betrayal can come from the people you least expect, but I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I had to face the worst, losing my wife, my money, my sense of security, and I survived. I fought for my dignity, my future, and my peace of mind. And I came out the other side, battered but still standing. My advice: never ignore the signs and don't let anyone manipulate you into thinking you're overreacting. Trust your instincts, protect your assets, and don't be afraid to fight for what's rightfully yours. People can betray you in ways you never imagined, but you have the power to reclaim your life if you're willing to fight for it.